The cowboy had been searching for a nanny for his baby for 6 months. That was how he framed it to himself, as if it were a practical matter, a problem that could be solved with time and persistence, the same way a broken fence or a wandering steer could be handled. But the truth was that the search had become something heavier, something that followed him through the days and kept him awake at night when the wind rattled the boards of the house and the baby cried in a way that sounded too much like grief. His name was Eli Turner, and the ranch lay a good half-day's ride from the nearest town, spread across dry grassland that turned silver in the early morning and burned gold by late afternoon. He had chosen the place for its quiet and its distance from other men, believing once that solitude was a kind of strength. Now it felt more like a test he was failing. The baby, Clara, was 9 months old and growing fast, with dark hair that refused to lie flat and a serious gaze that seemed to study him with unsettling patience. She had learned to sit on her own and was beginning to pull herself upright using the edge of the table or the legs of a chair. Eli did his best, but he knew how clumsy his hands were when it came to anything smaller than a saddle strap. He could calm her sometimes by walking the length of the room, murmuring whatever came into his head, but there were days when nothing worked, when she cried until his chest tightened and he had to step outside just to breathe. 6 months earlier, her mother, Anna, had died of a fever that swept through the region like a thief in the night. She had been strong, practical, and quick to laugh, and Eli had relied on her more than he ever admitted. When she was gone, the world felt uneven, as if one side of it had dropped away. At first, neighbors tried to help. Mrs. Callahan from the next ranch rode over with jars of preserved peaches and advice that came sharp and fast. A young girl from town stayed for a week, but she was homesick and frightened by the distance, and Eli could not blame her when she left. He posted notices in town, asked at the church, and paid the sheriff to mention it to travelers passing through. Some came to look, staying long enough to see the isolation and the work and then making excuses. Others never came at all. The days settled into a rhythm that left him exhausted. He woke before dawn to feed Clara and check the stock, carrying her in one arm while he moved through the morning chores. By mid-morning, she would nap, and he would work fast, knowing the quiet would not last. At night, he rocked her by the fire, listening to the coyotes and wondering how many more months he could manage like this. It was late afternoon when the Apache woman arrived. Eli first noticed her horse, standing calmly near the corral, its head lowered as if it had been there a long time. He felt a flicker of alarm and reached for the rifle by the door, then stopped himself. The land had taught him caution, but also restraint. He stepped outside instead, shading his eyes against the sun. She stood near the fence, tall and straight, her dark hair braided and tied with a strip of cloth. Her clothes were simple and well-worn, made for travel rather than display. She watched him without expression, not hostile, not welcoming, simply present. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the smell of dust and sage, and somewhere behind him, Clara made a small, questioning sound. "I can help you," the woman said at last. Her voice was calm, steady, and carried easily across the space between them. "Now I am here." Eli frowned slightly, unsure he had heard correctly. "Help me how?" he asked. She gestured toward the house, then toward the sound of the baby. "You are looking for someone to care for your child." He felt a jolt of surprise, followed by suspicion. "Who told you that?" "People talk," she said. "And children cry." He hesitated, weighing his options. He had learned enough about the world to know that trust could be dangerous, but desperation had a way of softening edges. "What's your name?" he asked. "Nayland," she replied. He nodded. "I'm Eli. That's my daughter, Clara." Nayland's gaze softened slightly at the mention of the baby. "May I see her?" Eli considered saying no. Instead, he stepped aside and held the door open. Nayland entered the house with quiet confidence, as if she were stepping into a familiar place. She knelt beside Clara, who was sitting on a blanket near the hearth, chewing on a wooden spoon. Clara looked up at the stranger with wide eyes. Nayland smiled, just a little, and held out a finger. Clara reached for it immediately, her small hand closing around it with surprising strength. Eli felt something loosen in his chest. "She is healthy," Nayland said. "She is curious. She doesn't take to everyone," Eli said, unable to keep the note of wonder from his voice. Nayland shrugged lightly. "Children know when they are safe." They talked as the light faded, Eli explaining the work, the isolation, the hours. Nayland listened without interrupting, her attention focused not just on his words but on the room, the worn furniture, the baby's movements. When he finished, she nodded once. "I can stay," she said. "I have no other place I must be." "And what do you want in return?" Eli asked. "Food, a place to sleep," she said. "And payment enough to buy what I need." It was less than others had asked, and the simplicity of it made him uneasy. "Why here?" he pressed. She met his gaze. "Because you need help. And because this land is close to my people's old trails. I know it." Eli thought of the nights he had spent staring into the dark, of the baby's cries and his own helplessness. He thought of the empty space Anna had left behind. Finally, he nodded. "You can try it," he said. "If it doesn't work, we'll part ways." Nayland inclined her head. "That is fair." From the first night, things began to change. Nayland moved through the house as if she had always known its shape, finding what she needed without asking. She showed Eli how to wrap Clara properly, how to soothe her with a steady rhythm rather than frantic motion. She sang softly in a language Eli did not understand, and Clara listened, her eyes growing heavy. The next morning, Eli woke to the smell of food cooking. He found Nayland at the table, Clara balanced on her hip, both of them calm and content. He felt a rush of gratitude so strong it nearly brought him to his knees. As the days passed, Nayland proved herself capable in ways Eli had not expected. She rose early, tended to Clara with patience and skill, and still found time to help with small tasks around the ranch. She did not shy away from the animals or the dust, and she asked questions that showed she understood the land. They spoke often in the evenings, sharing meals as the sky darkened. Nayland told him stories of her people, careful and measured, not offering more than he seemed ready to hear. Eli spoke of Anna, of how they had met, of the plans they had made. Sometimes the stories brought pain, but they also brought a sense of connection he had been missing. There were challenges, of course. Some neighbors looked askance at Nayland, their politeness strained, their curiosity sharp. Eli stood firm, meeting questions with calm answers, refusing to justify himself. Nayland bore it with quiet dignity, neither retreating nor provoking. Clara thrived under Nayland's care. She learned new sounds, new movements, her laughter filling the house. Eli found himself sleeping through the night more often, waking with energy he had forgotten he could feel. The ranch began to feel less like a burden and more like a home again. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Eli asked Nayland why she had come so far alone. She was silent for a long moment, watching the flames. "My husband died 2 winters ago," she said finally. "My son went to live with my sister's family. I did not belong where I was." Eli nodded, understanding more than he could say. Loss recognized loss, even when it wore a different shape. As months passed, trust grew, not in a sudden leap but in small, steady steps. Eli learned to read Nayland's moods, the slight changes in her posture that signaled concern or contentment. Nayland learned Eli's habits, his tendency to push himself too hard, his reluctance to ask for help. There were moments when Eli caught himself watching her, struck by her strength and her quiet humor. He did not name the feeling, not yet. The wounds he carried were still tender, and he respected hers enough not to rush. The land changed with the seasons. The heat softened into cooler nights, and the grass took on deeper hues. Clara took her first steps, wobbling between Eli and Nayland, her laughter bright as birdsong. Eli felt a swell of pride and gratitude that threatened to overflow. One night, after Clara was asleep, Eli stepped outside and looked at the stars, the sky vast and unbroken. Nayland joined him, standing at his side. They did not speak for a long time. "I'm glad you came," Eli said at last. Nayland nodded. "So am I." In the quiet that followed, Eli realized something had shifted inside him. The search he had been on for 6 months had ended, not just in finding help, but in finding balance, understanding, and a sense of shared purpose. The ranch was no longer a place of endurance alone, but of connection. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the promise of tomorrow. And for the first time since Anna's death, Eli felt that the future, uncertain as it was, might still hold something good.